Good morning, everybody. May I welcome all members and officers to this hybrid meeting of the Economy, Environment, Overview and Scrutiny Committee. This meeting is able to be viewed live by members of the press and public today. Therefore, may I welcome anyone that may be watching remotely. A recording of this meeting will be made available on the Council's webcasting and YouTube channels after the meeting has concluded, should anyone else wish to view it. Please be aware that the meeting is being transcribed only for the purposes of producing the minutes. The transcript will be deleted once the committee approves the minutes, and it should not be downloaded by anyone other than Democratic Services. To confirm, as a council, we welcome the use of Welsh language within our public meetings, but I can confirm that I have not received any notifications or requests to use Welsh today. Therefore, the meeting will be conducted in English only. I remind members to refrain from using the chat facility and instead use the raise hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. Please, could you also keep your microphones muted when not talking, so that there won't be any interruptions or feedback encountered. May I also remind members that as a statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measures Act 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meetings policy, any member attending the meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public viewing the meeting. So can I therefore ask that you all keep your cameras on for the duration of the meeting, please? Okay, moving on to the agenda. Could I allow Democratic Services officers confirm if we've received any apologies, please?
Yes, morning, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Carl Gordon, Elizabeth Haynes, David Williams and Nathan Yole.
Thank you, Niall. Could I ask members to state whether they have any declarations of interest to put forward, please?
No.
Can't see anybody coming forward. Okay, agenda item 3 is minutes of the meeting held on the 2nd of October 2025. Just to remind members, these minutes relate to the report we received on the Economy in Place Blueprint for Growth. Members, do you approve these minutes as an accurate record? Thank you, members, and note that. Agenda item 4, the action sheet. Don't think there's anything outstanding on the action sheet, but could members confirm that if they have any questions and whether they are happy to note the action sheet, please?
No, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you, members. We will note that. Right, agenda item 5 is the mid-year review of work programme. Geraint, can I please ask you to take members through this item?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Item 5 is a short report to give members the opportunity to review the work programme for the remainder of the scrutiny year. You'll see from the appendices to the report you've been provided with a condensed feeder pack containing up-to-date information from the current work programme, the Executive Forward Plan, Governance and Audit referrals, the Risk Register and performance information, including progress against the County Plan Delivery Plan, all relevant to this committee. Can I highlight to members, this is not an opportunity to scrutinise individual items contained within the feeders or the performance information, but rather offers the opportunity to pose questions to officers where you may identify potential issues within this information that may warrant a reprioritisation of items for the remaining 2 committee meetings. You'll see from the work programme selected at Visioning, the items selected for the remaining 2 meetings are Economy in Place Blueprint for Growth and Destination Torfaen. We've got Greg MacDonald on screen here this morning. I can't see. I'm not sure if Mark has given apologies or not. But the 2 items that are currently in the basket sit within sort of Greg's world. So I don't know, Chair, whether you want Greg to start first so he can explain where we are in terms of those items, if there's any issues, and then go to any members' questions, or the other way round, whichever.
I think it sounds wise if Greg's willing to go first on this.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair, and good morning all. Yes, just to say that both the items are still planned from our point of view. We've got the blueprint for growth. Obviously, came to scrutiny last year. There's been a lot of work around that, and we'll look to bring a draft report and a draft document back to you on the 12th of March, and that'll be a chance for you to have a look at what the works has been undertaken since the last scrutiny, and also to provide some more input into that, which will be an important in terms of timing, because we're looking to existing consultations underway, and we'll look to obviously get a final report done to take through to Cabinet and Council in early summertime. So that's that one, and then with regard to the other one in April, we've got the work around the visitor economy. We've got some work underway now around that, looking to develop a new plan for that area, and an action plan as well. And that work is will conclude initially in March, and then through March through 2026 we'll be developing an action plan and driving that forward. So the April meeting will be a timely one in terms of a segue between the strategy work and the action plan. So that's the overview. And I'm more happy to take any points of clarification or any other points of questions.
Thank you. Members, have you got any questions? Councillor Ashley.
I'm not used to this. Are there any reasons why those shouldn't go ahead? Simple question.
I think that's for Greg to answer. I think you said that they should be ready.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's quite a critical timing for both. So it's good timing for both. So we want them to go ahead on those dates. So unless there's any other a reason from any other points of view why they shouldn't go ahead, but from our point of view in terms of service, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hawler.
Thank you, Chair. Could we possibly look at Destination Torfaen? We have lots of businesses within Torfaen that are really struggling currently, and if we can enhance their businesses in any way, I think that's a priority for the town, for the council to actually achieve. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor, I think that is actually already for the April meeting, is Destination Torfaen. Councillor Ashley again.
Sorry, if that's the case, we really don't need to discuss it anymore, do we?
Geraint?
Yeah, as long as all members are happy to continue with the basket as it currently stands, that's great. And on behalf of the chair, if it's okay, Chair, Greg is obviously free to leave after this, isn't he?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Greg.
Cheers, Geraint.
Right.
Cheers all. Thanks a lot. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Apologies, start again. Agenda item 6. This is the sports facilities leasing policy and the provision and maintenance of play areas. The purpose of the report is to enable the Economy and Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee to assess the extent to which Council's processes, practices and improvement programmes, number 1, deliver sports facilities leasing arrangements that are equitable and consistent and promote effective and sustainable utilisation, and ensure play parks that provide fun, stimulating and safe environments for children, and 3, to consider how these activities align with strategic priorities. Before we commence discussions, I would like to welcome the executive member and officers to the meeting. And can I ask if we can quickly go around the table with officers so that everyone can introduce themselves? Bear with us a second, we're having a slight mic issue. Okay, we'll go for that again. If the officers would please do a brief introduction of themselves.
Good morning, everybody. My name is June Deven. I'm the Police Service Manager for Torfaen and the lead on the PSA Action Group.
Good morning, Jo Lewis, Lead Finance Officer for Economy and Environment and Economy and Place and Neighbourhoods and Environment. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Louise Powell, Environment Operations Manager.
Morning all, Dan Morelli, Head of Public Protection and Environment. Thank you.
Yes, good morning all, Helen Beale, Head of Property.
Good morning, Andrew Osborne, Group Leader Environment.
Thank you, everyone. Members, as we've all read the report, would it be wise if we can head straight into questions unless anyone has any introductory comments that they'd like to give beforehand? No takers on that? We'll go straight into the questioning then.
We've got the executive member on the call as well.
Yeah, I did introduce the executive member, yeah.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
That's okay.
Pardon me.
We all know you're there, Mandy.
Sorry. I didn't hear that.
Okay, on to the questioning strategy. Question 1 is from Councillor Haller.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, officers. This relates to the report on 3.13. Are you aware that the Communities Directive are going through the same process regarding community halls policy? And if so, how will the departments ensure that they share the same learning with each other or one another? Thank you.
Who's going to take that one for us, please?
Sorry, could you repeat the question? It's breaking up, sorry.
Yeah, okay. So this relates to 3.13 in the report. Are you aware that if the Communities Directorate are going through the same process regarding community halls policy, and if so, how will the departments ensure that they share any learning with one another?
Okay, yeah, thank you, Councillor Hall, for your question. I think it's fair to say that the journey that we're on as a council with the introduction of the deal and our county plan, all of our policies are constantly being reviewed to ensure that the corporate priorities running through those and we meet our objectives. In relation to the specific part of the question around community halls, because obviously we're focusing the conversation here on sports pitch leasing, sports facilities, perhaps, Helen, you want to make reference to how the community asset transfer approach will work in relation to community halls. It's also fair to say that we work very, very closely as directorates, and there's quite a lot of crossover with the work that we do. So regular discussions through leadership meeting and other forums to ensure that we learn lessons from one another and we align policies so that there is no sort of inconsistency and unintended consequences. That's how we're trying to work as different teams, service areas and directorates. So, Helen, anything you want to say on the community hall aspect? Thanks.
Yes, and I think just following up on Dan as well, the whole idea of having the corporate landlord model and the community asset transfer, which is a corporate process and procedure, we will work, the corporate landlord works across services, and part of the process is that any expressive interest that receive that relevant service will be incorporated in any of those decision makings. We are already involved, obviously, with the sports leases and also with the current community halls leases as well. So we have that cross-departmental oversight on it as well.
Happy with that, Councillor Haller? Thank you. Thank you for those answers. Okay, the next question is going to be asked by me. If I can just point out at this point, I will be asking questions for some of the councillors who put questions forward but haven't been able to attend today. So if my name crops up a lot, it's not on me directly. So, referring to paragraph 3.2.5 of the report, collaborative working around play parks is already being done on a community council level. I think that refers to in the fact that they have some funding available. Is there scope to explore collaborative work with others, for example, Bron Avon, any other community organisations that may be relevant?
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. Again, on this point, where we can, we try to work with all partners and stakeholders to maximise the impact that we have in this area. In relation to working with Bron Avon, we're currently embarking on entering into a partnership agreement for ground space maintenance, green space maintenance, ground management of the land that the council and Bron Avon own, and doing it together for economies of scale and to make sure that there's one standard that applies across the Torfaen as a whole. We see that there's opportunities to incorporate our repair and maintenance arrangements as part of that approach as well. So we could look for developing that work that we're doing to include things like playground inspections and maintenance. You'll note from the report also that there is reference to the fact that we, through an informal agreement, undertake inspections of a community council-owned park. So that is already happening in practice. When we undertake any improvements and repairs to parks as well, we try to consult as far and wide as possible with various interested parties, stakeholders and different groups as well. So involving community input into that process is essential for us there. I'm not sure if any other officers want to come in terms of working with community groups and other organisations on this point. Louise or Andrew, anything?
Just to say, I think that collaborative working is an underlying principle. I think in all the work we do in our service, and I fully support that, and it's fully embedded into our service. So I don't think I can add much more to what Dan said.
Councillor Ashley, you've got a question.
Yeah, very quick question. Where the organisations, informal associations, which we've got a few of, and they fundraise for equipment, what would the arrangement be? You've said informal. I can think of a few organisations that have raised money and got informal arrangements. How do you regulise that in terms of inspection and working in partnership with it?
Yeah, in terms of the informal arrangement that we have in place with the one community council, we essentially have a mechanism of charging for the service that we provide, and we essentially build it into our programme of work. So we deliver a consistent approach for all of our play parks and the one play park in that instance that's owned by them. The reason I say informal is because there isn't sort of a legal contract in place for that. We do it as a partnership, and there isn't sort of a huge amount of formality around that, other than the fact that we charge for the service that we provide, and we ensure that the inspection undertaken is to the same standard, so that there aren't safety concerns that are arising from that facility. If there is a need for substantial repair works, that's not something that is for us to take on as a local authority, but we feed that information back to the organisation for them to undertake the necessary repairs. We will do some minor repairs to address any issues that we might identify, for example, replacement of some fittings and bolts and so on, that type of work. But in relation to ensuring more formality around things, what specifically...
I'm thinking of friends of groups where they've had a relationship with the department and things have not gone right. I mean, I can think of several occasions when that's happened.
Would that be operational?
No, it's not operational. No, it's where money's been raised, some by the department, some and grants, and they've raised the grants, and things have gone wrong. And I think we've had a lot of experience on that. That's not necessarily operational. That's not community councils either.
Yeah, I suppose we have to look at the organisation and the specific service that we're looking to provide and assess the risk, and that will determine what arrangement that we need to have in place from that assessment, really. So there might have been issues previously with working with different community groups for a different purpose other than inspection and maintenance of play parks. The risks and the associated issues will probably be specific to the activity that we've engaged in there. So It's difficult to say, you know, it's quite a general question.
I think it's perfectly reasonable you inspect it, because at the end of the day, if it's not done to standard, then you as the owner, you're liable for it. But there is an expectation of the community raising the money that the thing is provided. It's a double-edged sword. Sorry about that, but
if the questions around liability, ultimately the owner maintains that, you know, retains the liability for that if something were to occur. Obviously, if we were to provide a service and it was far short of what was expected or didn't meet the requirements, then there's an ability for the organisation to have a conversation with us about that, you know. And yeah.
Okay, you happy with that, Councillor Ashley? Thank you. Welcome to the meeting, Councillor Haynes. I think the next question was going to be yours. Is question 3 on the questioning list? Would you like to take that?
Thank you, yeah. The report states that the Play Inspection app is used to mitigate potential risks. Could you provide a brief explanation as to how it works?
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. We use the Playground Inspection Software app because this operates in line with ROSPA inspection standards. The system supports structured, risk-based inspection and provides a robust audit trail. It aligns with our inspection programme. It's quite intuitive and reliable software, and a key benefit of the system is the ability to retain historical inspection records. So we have actually been able to access inspections that go back 10 years or more. So we do have legacy of sites available to us when we need to. Yeah, it's quite comprehensive, and it supports operational safety management and sort of like long-term compliance records and requirements.
You happy with that answer, Councillor Haynes?
Just from a sort of a simple perspective, really. The way that it works is ultimately we use a tablet, and it's got a pre-populated form on that which contains a set of areas that officers inspect against, so we ensure a consistent approach. But as Louise has said, it helps us to capture the findings of our inspections, where there's issues, and then to look at trends over time, so can identify parks that are subject to more problems for one reason or another, whether that's vandalism or because the equipment might not be as robust as in some other areas as well. So it's a really useful tool that we have to help identify those issues.
Thank you. Next question is from Councillor Parish, question 4.
Thank you, Chair. This relates to 3.2.8 in the report. It's with regards to accessibility, what engagement has been taking place, for example, with Torfaen Access Forum, and what feedback has been received?
Okay, anyone want to take that on consultation?
Sorry, Councillor Parish. I wonder if you could repeat the question. It was a bit quiet. My hearing is not the best.
Andrew, I think Councillor Parish's microphone is very quiet because it was very quiet in pre-agenda. Councillor Parish, would you like me to read it?
Well, you can, unless I try and shout.
Is that any better, Andrew?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, go on, Councillor Parish.
Okay, then. This relates to 3.2.8 in the report. With regards to accessibility, what engagement has taken place, for example, with Torfaen Access Forum, and what feedback has been received? Is that okay?
Thank you very much, Councillor Parish. That's much better. So yes, obviously it depends on what work is planned in different areas, but so we spoke to the particular local area. But I know our officer that has been coordinating the investment and improvement of the play areas has done extensive consultation in local areas, and that could be with a wide range of groups, including schools, community organisations and with local residents. and that some of those have actually influenced the design of the play areas and when we're undertaking improvements and changes have been made in response to local need. So I think that, in fairness, the officers covered that very well in the last few years in terms of our investment.
Right.
Councillor Hall,
Thank
is
you.
there a supplementary question there?
Thank you, Chair. With regard to access, Glenavon Park has just had some investment on the top end of the park to let wheelchairs and pushchairs come in. So I would like to thank the officers for doing that, which obviously is now giving more access to the park from the north of the park. And this was done through funding last year, so thank you to the officers for that. Thank you.
Okay, so not really a question, just a comment. Yeah, Julian, would you like to come in?
It was only just echoing what you've said there. I'm fully aware that Torfaen Opportunity Group, which supports children with disabilities and inclusive, have been heavily involved in designing to make sure they're inclusive to all. So, I think it is looked at every avenue possible to make sure that, they're adaptable and fit the needs of the children as well. Okay?
Yeah, thanks for adding that. Councillor Ashley.
Obviously, we're thinking of physical barriers. What about children with autism, ADHD, and other types of thing? What's the arrangement? Because obviously that's a different sort of need.
I think that's one for Julian.
More than happy to come in on that. Yeah, I'm fully aware, because we've been heavily involved as part of the Place Efficiency Action Group as well, is identifying, making sure it's accessible for all, because when we talk about disabilities, there's a wide range, and we've got to make sure. And there's been lots of additional equipment put in there, so it is catering for your wheelchair access, it's catering the sensory needs in there. There's display boards, which the display boards, I've seen the children actually using them, so for non-verbal children, or they can point to what they want to do. And I think, as an authority, I think we are really going above and beyond to make sure we can make these accessible. Because one thing we've got to, even though we are making it accessible for children with disabilities, we need to understand that all children will play on them as well. And that's what it's about, making sure that every child can, regardless of ability, but it is catering for those needs. So I think we're getting there, and it's getting there very well. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Owen, did you want to say anything there?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I think when we're planning on doing any new upgrade or putting any new equipment in, we do have drop-in sessions. I mean, the officers work with local children, schools, and, we just make sure that we are catering for all needs. Obviously, we can't do it all in one go, but where possible, we are putting as much play equipment in as possible. Like Julian said, the verbal non-boards that they've been playing with. And if you go to Pontnewydd Park, that was I think that was quite a big one. And it was really welcomed as well, as is Glenavon. So that's the way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Okay, the next question I'll be asking, it's referring again to point 3.2.8, 3.2.9 of the report. What barriers are there that make it difficult or even impossible to install inclusive play equipment? And also what barriers are existing around funding at the moment?
Oh, thank you, Councillor Clark. If I start, part of the Place Efficiency Action Group was, if you were aware, there are 8 elements of that, and it doesn't just cover static play, it covers a wide range of activities. But we need to make sure we're catering for all children. So we heavily consult in regards to children, young people, the community, everybody, to find out what is out there and what is needed. And when we did this piece of work last summer, where it was over 2,000 people were consulted on it, and over 1,500 of those were children. Then a pocket of money came available to support different groups, and then we worked alongside static play services to identify where that money could go. It had to be in line with the Place Efficiency Action Plan. So it was making sure we could support as many groups as we possibly can. So majority of the money went over to Parks Department to identify, to enhance what was already out there and develop and make sure they were inclusive. other pockets of money went to some third sector organisations to enhance their outdoor space as well, because it's not just about it's just not about the playground, it's about outdoor space. So there was additional small pockets of money went to some third sector organisations like TOGS, a disability site in Thornhill, CCYP in Cwmbran. Some money went to Pontypool, Aberystwyth Park, the area which we use for children with disability, to enhance those outdoor spaces as well. So it is using that funding is best as we could to support as many groups as we could. One area we are aware, because we could do with lots of money, and there wasn't a massive pieces of money for this that come from Welsh Government to support. And one of the elements as well was we were looking at designing one of our vehicles we've got. So those really hard to reach areas, we would enhance, because playworks are an asset as a outdoor space in playgrounds, etc. So those areas where we couldn't fund to put disability play activities in, we would drive to those and have a designated time and area where those children could engage with some workers instead. So we're trying to do our utmost to cover as many areas as we can. So I might have answered a bit of it there. So.
Yes, please, Dan, if you can take on the...
Yeah, thanks. Just in terms of some of the barriers, quickly jotted down here. So obviously space can sometimes be an issue as well we've got to overcome. So where we're currently working with existing play parks, obviously the design and layout might have been such that it wasn't thought about sort of inclusive access for all needs. So that is something that needs to be worked through in sort of redesigning. Vandalism is also sort of a consideration and a potential barrier in certain areas. Funding is part of the question, and that is obviously a barrier in terms of cost of replacing equipment, and something we're acutely aware of in all elements of public sector sort of delivery, really, is the limitations on funding. Whereas Julian has said this year, where we've had access to grant funding from Welsh Government through place efficiency funds, we've been able to look to maximise that by complementing it with other funding streams. So Section 106 funds, as is said within the report, members' choice funding as well. So where we've been able to use that money to pay for equipment, we've been able to use the money from members' choice reserve to undertake repairs to safety surfacing as well. So we have a better improvement project in place and better outcomes, really, in terms of the quality of the parks there. So yeah, a number of challenges, and funding is always a pressure. We've only got a small maintenance budget. I think that's reflected in the report as well. But as we identify issues, we would then be looking to make cases for funding as might be needed, particularly if it's a safety issue. So we don't compromise on safety. Safety is paramount. That comes first. So we'd ensure that children were protected at all costs there. Thank you.
Can I just ask just supplementary, under the deal, which is something we're obviously looking at in the background of this, would that be somewhere that community groups, third sector, could become more involved with generating funds for either upgrading, updating, or even possibly with some improvement and maintenance of the areas?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Councillor Clarkson. I think the more we can do to work together to maximise the sort of impact we can have in terms of repair and improvement, the better. So, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Ashley, you've got a question.
Outside the formal play areas, which we've got a lot of, and they're reasonably good, we've also got some other play areas which you can identify. I mean, the community farm is, I think, the only adventure playground we've got in the borough, which obviously people have to pay to go into. They've got the green space area there, very much Eden Project style stuff. Julian, I think, identifies, going to his place efficiency days, areas in which you can, I've noted down here, informal play areas, and you encourage that on the play from what I've seen over the years, informal play areas. How much of that can we identify that is there? And obviously the schools have got forest farms and things like that, which are wonderful areas. How much should you as a department work with that? Because that's precious, and it's something those of us in the past have been involved with adventure play and wild play, for want of a better expression. We need to programme it even if we don't go green. And I've got noted, because I'm quite keen on this, green spaces and commons, not football pitches and things. Obviously, we need to have that stuff open. How much of that we've got programmed in?
Thank you, Mr. Ashley. Part of the place action plan, there is an audit done. So all the information we collect, we work very close with all departments to make sure we capture all that sort of information. You know, it is good as what the information we can get off people, but we do our utmost to make sure we can capture all that information. So then, and that audit is privy to anybody, so that anybody can have it to identify what is already out there, what is available, what we can enhance, what we can make better, and where the gaps are. And that's what part of the action plan is, where the gaps are, how we can make them better. So it is available, and I can get it over to you. Okay.
Are you seeking to develop that at all?
There's the option to do it. You know, we're working in partnership with different people. There is those options to do it, but it's having the capacity to do it as well. You know, so it's something we could look at. No problem at all.
We could flag that up as a recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question was from Councillor Slade. Unfortunately, we haven't got a representative from Bronhaven attending today, Councillor Slade, but if you'd like to ask the question, and maybe our officers can talk about some of the collaborative working that they know about.
Okay. My question refers to paragraph 3.2.12. The report seems to imply that Torfaen may be in a position to be more proactive than Bronhaven around improving the equipment at its play parks. Do we get a sense of how keen Bronhaven are to improve their play areas? And I'm thinking particularly with they've got a lot of open space, and how keen would they perhaps be to see play equipment be put on those on their land, if you like?
Thank you, Councillor Slade. I think it's difficult for us to comment on this because, as it stands at the moment, we have quite separate ways of inspecting and upgrading our play park facilities. So I'm not really cited on the details to what Bronhaven follows or their programme of works and so on. So apologies for that.
I think that's reasonable. We were expecting someone from Bronhaven to attend, but more collaborative working is always welcome. I'm sure that's already being looked at. Okay, we'll move on to question 7. Councillor Ashley, this is a question for you to ask, please.
I think I've asked a bit of it of Julian already, but I will go with the other bit of it. How do we ensure that the findings of research attached to the play sufficiency assessment linked to forward planning so that future equipment and other, I did mention informal play there as well, are appropriate?
Thank you. Like I said, we have quarterly meetings with different officers from different departments come together, and in those quarterly meetings we look at that action plan. That action plan is designed and developed from consultation with children, young people, the community, and what we've already got there, and how we're going to progress and take it forward. The issue we've got, this is the first time ever we were given money from Welsh Government, and that was sort of ring-fenced to outdoor play opportunities. You've got to be careful, it wasn't just static play, outdoor play opportunities. But then that enhanced, so that element we could use and work with. It is doing what we can in our action plan by looking at budgets that are already in place, looking at departments already in place to make sure we can enhance it. But we do our utmost to make sure that action plan is developed from what the children are saying, what the community is saying, and what we can do on the budgets we've already got.
Thank you, Julian. Chair, if I may come back quickly and supplement.
If it could be quickly, we've still got a lot of questions, Stuart.
I know that. Which agencies do you involve in this?
So obviously Parks and Planning sit within that department, Youth Service sits on there, and representatives from community councils are part of that as well. You've got third sector organisations. It's a wide range. There's about 100 people involved in the PSA altogether, but the working group is approximately about 20 people.
Thank you very much. Great answer. Councillor Slade, can I invite you to ask the next question, please?
There was me, sorry. Members are aware that under Section 106 agreements, part of the developer's contributions allocated for parks and play areas includes a commuted sum for continuing management for 20 years. Is this happening in Torfaen, and could you perhaps describe the process?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I think I can answer a bit of that on that for you. So it depends on the individual agreement that is agreed at planning stage, as you'll be aware. So not every agreement will have a commuted sum for 20 years maintenance. Sometimes it will be a fixed sum to upgrade or a fixed sum for a specific item, like, for example, benches or a swing or a slide. So the more specific you are within a development, within the current planning law, there's a pooling of 5 rule. So if you ask as a council for a very generic contribution, just for general maintenance, you can't have more than 5 in one given area. So it's a much better part of the process, and it's the approach that we've taken for a number of years, to look at the site and the parks or play areas in the vicinity of the site, and to ask for a specific upgrade, for example, a springy a slide, and then that will allow us to have the funding to do that specific thing. And then what officers are really good at doing in terms of the project side of it is, as has been described earlier, is to look at the other facilities and to try and do something that's quite holistic on that site. So we might have funding for a slide, but we'd also like to upgrade some of the areas, the play surfacing areas. So we look at all the other budgets available, any grants, and we try and then make that a better facility improvement then. So we always try and use the 106 to the best and to complement whatever else we've got. And so each site, when you're looking at a development, there's a affordability assessment that has to be undertaken. The council can't ask for more than is dictated in the supplementary planning guidance. So depending on the size of the development and the number of houses as to how much money that developer will have to contribute. So we do have to prioritise, and you'll see and you'll know from experience that a lot of the money we ask for is for play first of all, and then adult recreation facilities then as a secondary. So yeah, I can provide you more information on specific sites if you wanted to have that separately.
No, I think it's okay. I think you've answered the question. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The next question is from me, and sort of we've touched on this previously about how information gathered from the inspection records is used to mitigate risk. But it came up, should this also include the age of any equipment, with the idea of making sure that any planned upgrades are done equitably across the borough and relevant to the age of the equipment and the pleasure sort of gained from that. So it's a lot different now than it was 20 years ago.
Thanks, Councillor Clarkson. Probably fair to say on this is that the age of a piece of equipment alone wouldn't necessarily be cause to look to justify providing an upgrade. I think you need to look at the play value and look at what provision is there more widely in terms of deciding what we look to upgrade and what we change. So from an age perspective, that as a criteria wouldn't just sit alone really. And what we often do with play parks is add to existing play parks. So as an example, a swing perhaps will have the same value, whether that's a new swing or something that is older. What we do as part of our inspection approach is ensure that what is in place is actually safe to use, so all the fittings, the nuts and bolts and so on. So even though something might have been in existence for a while, it doesn't mean to say that parts of that piece of equipment haven't been changed over time, like the seat, like the chains, like the bolts and so on. So Julian, is there anything further you want to say in terms of age of equipment?
I sort of echo, it is about the play value. It's about, that is the most important thing. Obviously, health and safety comes first, but then it's about the value of that play. If the play value is there, that's what more, you know, we got to, you know, you can consult with children, you've got to be careful because you've shown something, so all singing and dancing in bright colours, some children will automatically go for that regardless of what the play value is, but you need to understand really what the value, what those children are getting out of it. And we've got to remember, children got to take risks, you know, that is important as well. You know, and that risk-taking is important for those children to learn and develop and get those skills as well. So,
have you got a question, Councillor Ashley?
Yes, I have. The play value aspect, and if you take, I mean, take the grandson over certain playgrounds, some of the equipment, I looked at it, and some of it must be 40, 50 years old, and it's not very safe, some of it. Some of it's wonderful, and you've repurposed it beautifully. I just wonder whether you take kids round with you, like Julian's got access to children, whether they actually take them and look at a piece of equipment with when you do the work, because I wonder sometimes there's certain bits of equipment that are good and some that aren't, and simply take a child along with you and have a look at this, because I know that people know the technical aspects of it, but actually taking a child along with, they need to take risks, I agree with that, but some of the bits of equipment I wonder about.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. I would say our play inspectors do inspect high priority parks and pieces of equipment regularly. It is part of their regular schedules. Health and safety is a priority above all else where we come to equipment. As and when we can replace any defects parts, we will. If any bit of equipment is deemed unsafe, it will be cordoned off or possibly removed. So the health and safety of equipment is paramount for our team.
I understand that, but taking my grandson along to one particular bit of equipment, and I think other parents have made, and grandparents have made this observation about certain pieces of equipment, the risk on them, and I'm someone that's in the past has been experienced at this. I wondered about that bit of equipment, because children will find ways of getting tangled up in equipment.
Councillor Ashley, I think we've...
No, I know, I get
we've determined that they are inspected and they are deemed to be safe.
Asking whether they ask Julian to look at it, it's a simple thing, because he's got children in practice that go and do things.
Councillor Hawler.
Yeah.
This is an observation. Last year I raised an issue about a safety issue in Blenavon Park, and within 2 hours that area was closed off and the measures of health and safety were taken in a real positive way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawler. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question now, which is from Councillor Haynes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Very quick, simple one. How are play park closures and information around ongoing works communicated to the public?
Thank you for the question. We liaise very closely with our comms team, and we send out communications as far in advance as possible to inform members and comms so we can get that information out.
Okay, happy with that, Councillor Haynes? Thank you. Councillor Hawler, I think the next question is for you.
Thank you, Chair. What benchmarking exercises have we undertaken with other local authorities around our provision and maintenance of our play parks? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawler. To reassure members and yourself, we are a member of AMSI, Association for Public Service Excellence, and we're in regular contact and we're part of a networking group in there. So we generally exchange ideas about different things, and people can ask questions and they get answers from right across the UK on specific issues. Also, we are a member of Green Space Wales, which is local authorities across Wales, albeit most of them are in the south. And at those meetings, which take place on a quarterly basis, I think it is, there's regular discussions about different aspects of green space management, including parks. If there's anything specifically you'd like some information on or like to check against other authorities, we'd be very happy to investigate that for you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Councillor Ashley, please.
Right. I'm aware, members are aware that some parks have charitable status and are or were in the past Fields in Trust. That was the old National Playing Fields Association parks, which I still believe that are inspected by them, and some have got covenants on them that were provided in the past by national charities, the Caulfield Regenerations Trust, I'm thinking of. And are we bound by that, or do we have any obligations to any of that? I can tell you the parks as well, I know them.
Yes, if there are covenants which are there against the legal title, then they are enforceable by the person that put that in place. Yeah. So there is obviously a risk around that. From a property point of view, we are in the process of registering all our land with the land registry and collecting all of that information of where it is, and then we can then assess that and manage it accordingly. Some of those covenants that are put in place may not be enforceable now, but that would be a legal view depending on the particular site and the covenant.
The other point about it is if you've got friends of parks groups, and that we also might be in for getting some funding as well, which did strike us. So I come back on that one. And as far as the Fields and Trust lot, having sat at community council meeting where they came along, it did strike me they were another one where we could get some funding as well. So it's a two-edged sword. They think they can inspect it, but they really ought to, if you've got money, it would be useful for us to have it locally.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. Okay, at this point, I'd like to thank our colleague Julian Devine for attending this morning and helping us out with the questioning strategy, and release you from the meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Morning all. Bye-bye.
Okay. The next questions are more relating to the sports facility waiting list. So question number 13. Councillor Slade, would you like to ask this for us, please?
Yeah, sure. This one refers to paragraph 4.1.1. Members were surprised to see St Albans School on the sports facility waiting list. Could you explain why a school would need to be on the list?
Thank you, Councillor Slade. As it stands at the moment, with our current policy, there is no sort of exclusion to any organisation, group, school, whoever were to express an interest. They would be added to the list. As to the reasons why they might have requested to be included, it might be for additional facilities for training. It might have been that they've got more more need for pitches. They would have to explain what the in answering your question, they would have to sort of describe what they intend to use that for, but we don't currently have restrictions in place where we would say a school can't be part of that list. It's probably worth saying as well that we do know that schools operate in the reverse as well, and they open up their facilities to wider communities. So if they've got pitches or 3G or whatever it might be, it does operate in many respects in the reverse as well, where schools open their facility for people to access and use. So I can't specifically say why they wanted to be included on the list, but they are there because a request was received. Yeah.
I just have a bit of a concern that, the needs of a school would seem to trump the needs of any sort of community group. For one thing, it should really be free, I would imagine, to a school if they need an area, for putting games on or something. And their needs are going to be different. They'll just want it Monday to Friday, 9 till 3. So, they could then, like I say, you've made the point, they could then rent it out themselves and make a few bob. I don't understand why a school, if they've got an identified shortage of playing field, why they need to be on a waiting list. I just don't understand it. Thank you.
Yeah, as I said, as to the reason why they're on there, I'm not entirely sure. I get the point that is being made really in terms of schools having sufficient provision themselves. As it stands, this is why we're going through the process, because we've recognised the opportunity to update and provide further clarity, because you'll see from the waiting list that there are 17 clubs and 1 private business. So, you know, for members to take a view as to, in that instance, whether a private business should trump a community organisation or vice versa. You know, those are the questions, I suppose, that need to be worked through, because it's quite open as it stands at the moment, and having some criteria might help with the allocation process and ensure that the community is getting best value for it, but probably something that Helen will be able to pick up if we talk about community asset transfer later in the expression of interest process. But that will look to introduce some clarity around criteria. So hopefully that helps.
Is that okay, Councillor Slade? I thought maybe the expression of interest questions might answer it.
But I just think a school, I mean, they've got an obvious need. If they've got an obvious shortage of playing fields, they should just that should trump everything. You know, I don't understand why they have to sort of bargain with a bunch of other people. Just.
And I think what Dan said, without having St Albans here to say why they've put an interest forward, maybe that was something you could take up outside of the meeting, Councillor Slade?
Okay, I will do. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you ever so much. Okay, the next question is from Councillor Ashley.
Yeah, this follows on the same theme, to be quite frank. Has the possibility of utilising school grounds been considered, particularly around sports pitches? Can a mutual policy be explored with education? The other thing that I've found recently is that schools are locking grounds. Obviously, there's the problem of caretakers, but it does strike me that an awful lot of school grounds locked up at night and during the weekend, and we've got a shortage with your waiting list as evidence. It does seem ridiculous in a lot of ways.
I do agree with that. And there are sort of two things for schools. Certainly the introduction of the funding with the 3G pitches have allowed the schools to let them out separately for other sports uses. I think there was also some that haven't got 3G pitches. They're very protective about their pitch. They don't want it all turned up in the mud and things. But I think it is as part of the process and as part of the sort of the way we want to work more collaboratively together and use our assets more effectively as part of the asset management strategy.
Thank you for that, Ryan. Because other authorities, I think, when we look around, are doing that. And it's a matter of opening up resources and using the funding regime to do that. Can we use that as a recommendation, please? Possible? Yeah.
Mark it down, Stuart, and we'll bring it up later. Yeah, I've marked if you've done already. Okay, Councillor Slade, next questions from you, please.
Thank you, Chair. Have we explored increasing the council's stock of pitches in order to manage more pitches under the current pay and play model seen at Northfields and Southfields in Cwmbran? And could this alleviate some of the demand for pitches and manage community expectation around local access to facilities?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. The fields operate as a bit of a flood defence as well in that area, so we would rather keep them as pay and play because we can manage them a bit better. And I think if they were taken on, you know, in terms of a lease or a licence agreement, I think there'd probably be quite some significant works that would be required. So we think we'd rather keep it as our own asset to manage.
Just to add to that as well, Councillor Slade, I think by having a pay for play provision, it helps to ensure greater equity of access as well, so more clubs can use the facilities as opposed to somebody having exclusive use of that facility. So it does provide us a means to make sure that there is more provision for play as opposed to less and being exclusively used by one clubs as well. So there's a range of considerations with that, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to say I agree with the last point. I think the smaller clubs need somewhere that, you know, the pay and play provision. great swathes of our sort of open spaces being taken over by just a few large clubs, you know, particularly in Cwmbran, and I wouldn't like to see the small clubs suffer. Thank you.
Yeah, just to say, there's also opportunities. I think we've reflected it within the report to see how we could look to make it easier for existing clubs to share their facilities. As it stands at the moment, there's quite a lot of limitations in place to enable clubs to do that. So, you know, having that conversation, working with existing clubs and trying to see if they've got an appetite to share the facilities could be a way of addressing that. We do know that some clubs will not necessarily want to do that for various reasons, but it doesn't mean to say it can't be explored, I think, is fair to say.
Councillor Ashley?
Yeah. Councillor Slade and I both discussed the business about that sports bodies require clubs to put gates around things. It's quite common, especially bigger clubs. And are you in conversation with those about sharing grounds? Because obviously with football, I think rugby is the other one, they like to have gated, and that's the problem about sharing. Obviously with the flood problem with North and South Fields, you can't do that. How do the sports bodies get around that?
But when I talk about sharing it, I think it would be sharing on the basis of an agreement in place between the club that is leasing or licensing the facility and whoever is expressing an interest to share it. So if it is fenced off, then they would be provided access to use that. I wouldn't say that as part of these discussions that these pitches are necessarily open access to all, because there is all sorts of problems with that as well in terms of maintaining the pitch to the playable standard and so on. So I think it would be a managed approach to that.
Okay, thank you for those answers. Okay, move on to the next question now. It's regarding the refits and the situation with the lease there. So would you like to provide us with an update around the options available at the refits when the lease and licence arrangements are reviewed, or how they're going to be reviewed?
Thank you, Councillor Clarkson. We've identified the refits as something that needs consideration by the Council. We haven't yet embarked on looking at options, because to do that, I think we would need to have a conversation with the club itself that occupies the land under the licence and the landowner, and working with Helen's team then, and a collaborative approach to look at the various options together. And I don't think it would be right for me to talk about any of that detail in the meeting without having gone to those parties.
Right, so that's the update, because you're right at the very beginning and things will progress as appropriate. Okay, thanks ever so much. Investment in place parks is the next area we're looking at for questioning. So question 17, Councillor Hall, would you like to answer that, please?
Thank you, Chair. This relates to 4.3.2, the investment plan park since 2024. How sustainable is the current level of funding for improvements of our play parks?
Thank you, Councillor. Well, I think, as I said before, when we were talking about Section 106 agreements, we know in advance when some of that money is going to come in. Well, we know when the development starts, and we know at what point of the development the money will come in if we've secured funding for play or adult recreation facilities. That gives us a window of opportunity to then plan a project and look for other funding to supplement that. So I think that's really the way that we've been managing over, well, certainly through austerity and beyond, really, because even though the Council's invested some capital funding in 2021, and we've had some members' policy choice funding investment alongside the play sufficiency grant, we had shared prosperity funding over the last 3 years. At the moment, we don't know what local growth fund specifically, the conditions of that will be, as to how that will invest in local businesses and communities, but certainly that's an avenue of funding that its predecessor, it's not a direct predecessor, but the stretch of funding that we had over the last 3 years with shared prosperity, I think just off the top of my head, about £300,000-400,000 went into parks alongside their play areas, alongside Section 106 funding supplementing that. So I think that strategy has proven to be very beneficial for us, and a good way of us being able to put together funding packages for projects which otherwise wouldn't have been able to be taken forward. And I think that strategy is something that we would look to continue alongside identifying any other funding that we can put forward, either through council funding or through external funding.
I'm fully aware that Torfaen are really very good at getting funding bids from lots of other areas, and hats off to you guys for doing that. Is there any more fundings that are coming through in the pipeline for future that you're actually looking at the current moment?
And the major source is the Local Growth Fund, which is not a direct replacement for Shared Prosperity Fund, but is Central Welsh Gov's replacement capital funding programme, and it's also a revenue funding programme. That's just over 6 million for a 3-year funding programme. So again, at the moment, because Welsh Government haven't specifically provided all of the detail around exactly what is eligible and exactly what the outcomes would be required of the funding in terms of the wider community and business benefits, borough officers are obviously looking to maximise the council's need, lining it up with the deal and the principles of the deal and what we want to achieve from that, and using that funding as a catalyst to deliver that. So that's the main focus of funding at the moment.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Parish, the next question is from you, please.
Thank you, Chair. This relates to point 4.3.3 of the report. With regards to vandalism, what options have been explored, particularly around the use of CCTV or locking of parks where possible?
Thank you, Councillor Parish. It's probably fair to say that, as we said earlier on, the incidents of vandalism, they're identified at the specific parks. They help us to sort of see where the hotspots are, and we liaise them with community safety colleagues to ensure that they're part of the patrols that they undertake and that the police are aware to limit the issues that occur there. Vandalism, as you see from the report, is a significant issue and causes us financial strain as well, 24 grand or just over last year. It being experienced. In relation to the use of CCTV, there are sort of a range of challenges in installing CCTV in park. Often, whether there's the supply of, the electricity, if they're reliant on electricity to operate, the positioning of them, the fact that the cameras themselves could be subject to vandalism. Also, if it's children causing the problem, the challenges with identifying children and taking them to task, that could also be an issue in terms of the use of CCTV. I think, obviously, CCTV in some instances serves as a deterrent, but there's probably a greater piece of work that needs to be done in terms of educating and making children and parents aware of the issue that is happening in local communities, in specific local communities. So I think to try to prevent this, there needs to be a multi-pronged approach. I'm not sure what the legal requirements say in relation to the installation of CCTV in parks and whether there's any sort of restrictions that might apply from that perspective. I'm not entirely sure. We'd need to look into it. But I know that none of our play parks in the borough have CCTV, and I'm not aware of many in other local authority areas that also have CCTV as well. So there must be a recognised issue with the fact that it's a problem. I don't know, Lou, is there anything else on that?
Regarding locking parks, I know that was mentioned quite a bit.
We wouldn't look to lock parks initially. We would engage with community safety teams initially going forward and raise any concerns, Dan has advised. It would be a bit of a resource issue as well, because we manage and maintain 48 parks across the borough, so it would be a bit of a resource issue as well from that perspective.
Yes.
The other thing.
Councillor Ashley, if you can. Councillor Parish, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, sorry.
Just a minute.
Yeah. Yes. If particular parks or playing areas are regularly vandalised. It could be worth the cost of CCTV because it is a deterrent. I mean, other places have, they have found this and it's worked. So, I think it should be looked at.
We'll discuss that under recommendations, Councillor Parish. Councillor Ashley?
Yes, thank you.
On a similar subject, friends of groups who've got a sense of ownership, do you encourage them? Because my experience of friends of groups, and we've got a few of them where I am, I'm not mentioning it, notice, they do at least have a sense of ownership, and they are regularly there and put events on and work with the local patrol officers, etc. So, and they look at that sense of ownership means that they're much more used, and and got people in them. So I'm wondering whether that, in lieu of CCTV, and we've got examples elsewhere as well, where good use of park mitigates the fact we haven't got a parking anymore, and they do challenge. So I'm wondering whether you guys are encouraging that.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. Anything to add to that?
Just to say, yeah, that's an area that needs exploration. I think it's a sensible one. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next question is from Councillor Hall, please.
Thank you, Chair. 4.43. Is there a reason why a number of inquiries and complaints in the table includes issues relating to both parks and play areas? Would separating them make them easier to identify hotspots? And I allude to Dan's answer to the last question about talking to antisocial behaviour reduction officers and coordinators, and also the police. But if the issues relating to those hotspots was separated, then conversations with the antisocial reduction coordinators and the police would be more positive. Is that something that we could look at?
Thank you, Councillor Hall. I think that's a sensible suggestion. What we're talking about in terms of the figures are relatively small numbers, so it's easiest to, as it stands at the moment, to separate those out, but that is a bit of a manual exercise. Also, it's worth reflecting that we don't just rely on the complaints reported into us to identify sort of issues. As we've sort of said, we get quite a few complaints because we've got such a robust inspection regime that helps us to identify issues in advance of them being reported to us anyway. So we have to use a range of different types of intelligence to identify issues that might occur. But it is fair to say, I think, by having a way of separating out the reporting, it would make it easier for us, and that's something that we can look into. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just ask a quick supplementary there? Gwent Police, do we liaise with them? Because most people would report antisocial behaviour to Gwent Police rather than Torfaen Council. I know I've put reports in myself that aren't recorded in your information and documents.
Yeah, I think our liaison with community safety, they've got very close links with Gwent Police, so when we're feeding information into them, they're the sort of conduit to have the conversation with the police rather than lots of different parts of the council having that discussion. So that's as far as I understand it works, and Louise has got something to add as well.
I was going to say, and that works vice versa as well. We get contacted by the community safety team on any hotspots or any advice that they require on certain areas as well. So it's quite a close relationship.
So, Paul,
I was just going to, sorry, I was going to allude to what you were actually saying then, that there are other ways of communicating into Torfaen relating to vandalism and hotspots that happen. And by collecting all that information, you're going to get a bigger picture of what's going on. For example, in the last few months, we have had antisocial behaviour in the north of the borough that's been related, that ABS have been involved in, the police have been involved, but it would give you a clearer picture of the hotspots potentially for what we were just discussing about cameras and everything else that you were talking about. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move on now. Asset management framework and sports facilities we're looking at next. The next question is for me to ask on behalf of another council. Right, so it's under the CAT model. Are we intending to transfer the leasehold or freehold for sports facilities And how will we mitigate against the risks of potential failure of any community asset transfers? I'll say it in full.
Thank you, Chair. A community asset transfer covers all property-related agreements, so it can be a licence, a short lease, a long lease, or a freehold. What I'm intending is that, and this, as this guidance has developed over the last few years, across all authorities, is that a freehold is in exceptional circumstances only. So we would only be looking at leaseholds. It is get confusing. I know there is something in there that refers to a disposal. So even if you let on a lease, it's still classed as a disposal because you're effectively losing management control of it. So just to clarify that. And the idea of having a proper process and making sure that the lease provides us to do regular reviews and things, we can perhaps get on the front foot before any problems start and try and prevent failure. I know it is, because at the moment, I don't think any of our leases have review periods in there, and that's sort of part of the role of the asset management team and also the services involved to touch base with them. How can we help, any problems, and more of that collaborative approach to try and stop failure. Hopefully, they won't, but I think early intervention will prevent that, and then if it does look like it is failing, we could put processes in place and things to either try and mitigate that or look at alternative options.
Thank you for that answer, it's very clear. Next question I'm asking again, with regards to an asset being suitable for community transfer, how will we ensure that neither Torfaen County Borough Council nor the organisations are exposed to unreasonable liability? How will issues around condition and suitability of assets be managed? We were thinking then in terms of some hidden sort of asbestos issues, smaller clubs that have allowed buildings to run into disrepair, that type of thing, for example.
And I think this is where we are sort of in a bit of a situation of where things have gone across and then not been managed. I think with any CAT application, part of our role is that we will get a condition survey. We've already agreed a 5-year rolling programme of condition surveys, and then asbestos surveys and anything which comes up. Really, a lot of the sports leases are already under full repairing leases, so it should have been their responsibility to get. And that is something which we will pick up as part of the review of these leases as they come across. And then also part of it is to support them. Obviously, there is, within organisations like the Torfaen Alliance as well, to any that they plan that spend. If they've got a condition survey and they know what their roles and responsibilities are, and they know that they might have some big ticket items in 5-10 years' time, they can plan the spend and also utilise grant funding and other things which may come around as part of that as well.
Can I ask? There's a couple on this one. One, in my experience of this so far, one is you've got asset with maintenance problem. The classic one is the trees, and peripherals. Bear in mind, I'm chair of allotments, so we've got a problem down there as well. Andrew well knows, and. Trees and things like that grow, and who's responsible is the classic one. I think we've had conversations in certain places, you're smiling. That's that one. The other is unplanned maintenance of things that might be insurance jobs. There's a certain property, the roof came off, and you had things of that one. And, if we're looking at forwards, I'm going to put it across with everything in good condition. And then is there going to be a sum of money there for that sort of thing? That's the list that I know a lot of people that I've talked to love the idea of.
I think it depends on what's in place at the moment. As I said, a lot of these leases are already under full repairing leases, so it should have been their responsible, and it's how we manage that with them collectively. I think going forward, and again, it's part of the deal and the community asset transfer is that organisations, third sector, can get grant funding to do some of this work as well, and how we support that, rather than it coming onto the council pot. I think from insurance perspective, we've got a bit of a mixed bag that some of these leases, the tenant insures, which then, you know, we do need to do our due diligence of whether they're insuring correctly. But I think going forward, it would be the council would insure, which then means that we've got that management in place to make sure that we don't have those, because obviously insurance does come down to proper maintenance and things like that. So if they haven't complied, then it wouldn't be insurable.
Could I just supplement you very quickly on this? It's about what I think I'd like to recommend is that we're clear what the policy is going forward.
We can do that.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying whether you would think that would be reasonable.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, and you know, the whole idea of what we want to do with this new process is to make it fair and have a standardisation of approach and protect from risk on both parties.
So, are you okay with that, Chair?
Yeah, can I just add to that? The leases currently, some of them vary. No clubs get problems getting capital funding. It's a lot easier to get sort of operational funding than it is, and that's caused a problem for some. Some of the leases make it more difficult for them to actually apply anyhow. Are we going to be evening that out? And I've got a few with community halls as well that have that issue.
Yes, because obviously grant funding is dependent on the length of the lease, and the amount of funding depends on, you know, some might only need 5 years, 10 years, some will generally need, the big capitalisers, a minimum of 25 years. And this is where I think, you know, I think the process, you know, new clubs would probably have a shorter lease, but again, this is how we work together as a council and part of the deal and the services. But I'm very much, those established groups, you know, a lot of them are now 12 years down a 25-year lease, and they haven't got enough length on that term. So we want to use this process to look at, it's not an extension, it's more of a surrender and re-grant, but I'm very keen that a lot of these leases for good established clubs should be more than 25 years, because a 25-year lease very quickly becomes too short.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, investment is long-term now. We're all aware of that for some of the clubs that are progressing up leagues. Okay, next question. Councillor Parish, please.
Thank you, Chair. This relates to 4.2.8 of the report. Have any organisations suggested a willingness to continue short-time leasing? And are there any options available for this, particularly in relation to new organisations?
We do have some of the sports leases are actually only under licences, so they have no management responsibility at all, other than really to the pitch. A lot of the buildings still fall to the council. I think it's got to be an assessment, and that's part of the process really. New organisations, we would recommend a shorter lease so they have time to bed in, prove, and they know what they're taking on. I think, you know, short leases aren't out of the equation, but the idea is to get that long-term investment and to keep those assets maintained through potentially external funding, and they need the long lease to achieve that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for that question and answer. Okay, next question, Councillor Ashley.
Members are aware that clarity in timeframes around landlord consent be an issue for organisations and even affect them in terms of grant funding. Is there scope for organisations to have a single point of contact to mitigate that risk, this risk?
Yes, absolutely. That is, and the landlord's consent process, as part of the whole asset management strategy, is to improve our processes and procedures. And part of the, you know, the new process is that there will be a single point of contact, and they will have an officer to refer to, and that we will make that process a lot less onerous than what it is at the moment.
It's a great that's a great answer.
It is. You're good at
Can we ask the next question, please, Councillor Ashley?
Next question. Myself and the chair of TVA were in on this one, which is 4.2.12. Members are aware that TVA are engaged regarding community halls, but unaware of their expertise around sports leases. Emphasise that one. What engagement has there been with TVA around their ability and capacity to do this work? Bearing in mind he's on this committee, but he's not here today.
I haven't done that to date. I'll be honest.
Well, due
But it
diligence.
was a conversation. I don't know whether you've had any or not. No, but I think it was on the back of a conversation that they are our community external voluntary group lead, and happy to have those conversations. It was
Can I just come back on that briefly? Yeah, it is a capacity issue for them. I know some sports clubs that have engaged them around assistance with grant funding, but the sports teams tend to go out to their organisations more than to TVA. So it may be, if we open this up and mention it releases, it could be quite an influx of work for TVA. So yeah, those would be very welcome questions if you could have those going forward. Very quickly, Councillor Ashley, please.
The lead officer in TVA is actually an accountant. She's actually very good.
Okay.
So
thanks,
she's
Doctor.
got a lot of
Thanks,
experience.
Councillor Ashley. We'll go back to the questioning now, if that's okay with you. Right, the next question I'm asking. With regards to the renewal of leases under the community asset transfer model, is the intention for organisations already in residence to be given first refusal?
Yes, because they've already got a lease, and we already have 2 or 3 requesting an extension. So part of that would be to that process, and any lease renewals would go to those currently in occupation.
That's great. Thanks for that. It's just that in the document that we read about community asset transfer strategy, it didn't really make that clear. So if that could be clarified within the document, if the public are going to read them, it can cause alarm if it's not very clear. Okay, if I'm asking the next question as well, please. It's regarding 4.2.16 of the report. Members raised potential issues around some organisations being better equipped to keep track of newly available facilities, and also the variance in necessary management expertise to understand application processes. So how will we manage this risk around equity under the expression of interest model that we're intending to apply? If we're going to open it up to businesses, schools, they might be very good at putting expressions of interest. Our small local clubs, they are excellent coaches, great with young people, hopeless with administration and grant applications, expression of interest. So how are we going to manage actually helping them with that?
It's just sort of go back to the previous question about the external support which might be available, whether it's through, as we've already talked about, the Torfaen allowance, they've got capacity, or other means. The CAP policy does exclude, well, it doesn't exclude businesses. It is more around those which are charity, community organisations, those properly constituted bodies. I think what I do want to take away is to explore how we do get that equity and how we do advertise it properly. I don't think those channels are in place yet, and I think that's something we need to take away and explore.
Great, thanks.
So just to say on that one as well, it depends on which lens you're looking through, but having clearer criteria and improved processes will help to ensure equity, as opposed to there being perhaps not as clear criteria. But I get the point around the support is key to enable everyone to access.
I'll be honest, I read it and it put me off slightly. It is quite a process to have to go through, and it can be overwhelming for people who that's not their area. They are sports, they're onto the sports side of things. So yeah, it's back to TVA again, whether our capacity builders could be involved in that type of thing, so that we've got something actually from inside the borough. They're very good at working with these. They've all got links already with the sports teams, in my experience. Okay, I'll move on to the next question then. It's the last question, and it's to be asked by Councillor Parish, please.
Thank you, Chair. Will organisations have a right to appeal against CAT decisions? If so, what will this involve?
I think I've put in the draft policy that they would have no right of appeal, but if you want us to take that away and look at that, then I can.
Yeah, I think that's something we'll put as a recommendation, yes. Councillor Parish.
Yes, that'll be fine. Thank you.
Okay, that's the end of our questioning to date. Has anyone else got anything else to add? Mandy, did you want to come in on anything at all?
No, just to say that I welcome your views, comments and recommendations as always, and look forward to receiving them. And thank you for having me, Linda.
Thanks. Any of the other officers got anything else they wish to add before? Okay, so can I thank the executive member and our officers for their time and contributions to the meeting today, and ask if they would like to leave the meeting so that members are able to formulate our recommendations. Thanks ever so much for your time this morning. It's been good. Members, can I remind you that you are still in formal proceedings and will still be in webcast, please. There's a bit of a squeeze around this table. Okay, right. So I'd just like to remind members what we've been asked to look at as a scrutiny committee and to consider when coming up with our recommendations. So members of the Economy, Environment, Overview and Scrutiny Committee are invited to A. Review the information presented on how the Council's processes, practices and improvement programmes deliver equitable, sustainable sports facilities and facilities leasing that ensures play parks provide safe, stimulating environments for children. That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? Does everyone got that? B, we're being asked to consider alignment with the Council's strategic priorities and to make recommendations for improving sports leasing and play parks, taking into account financial constraints and opportunities for community involvement under the deal. Okay, has anyone got any recommendations they've already formulated? Councillor Hall, you've got your hand up.
Yeah. Could it be that there was a lot of recommendations actually within that meeting, and would it be useful for Garrett to actually say what those were within it, because there were several recommendations already placed? Is that okay?
Over to you, Gareth.
I think it would be better for members to go first, obviously, and for me to come in. It would be more appropriate, I think. And with the list I've got, I'm not clear in my mind which were the ones that were definite ones in the meeting, which were ones that I jotted down as potential, so I wouldn't want to blur the lines.
Okay. So there's one from me, and that's about it's about a recommendation about liaising, separating off the tables on question 19, talking about the hotspots and separating those issues off, so it could be more information could be taken out to the officers in an appropriate place.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I think Councillor Parrish's last question would be a recommendation. Councillor Parrish, do you agree with that? To take out the no, or to explore the no right to appeal?
Yes, I think that's important. Thank you.
Any others from those online? I've got one to put in first, if that's okay. Collaborative working around funding, as well as sort of waiting for the Welsh Government funding approach. Can we sort of look into in more detail how community councils, businesses like Rotary Club groups, friends of groups can have the potential to raise funding towards improving our play areas. Everyone all right with that?
Yeah.
Councillor Hawler?
Sorry, sorry. This meeting this morning has been really very, very useful for those people around the table. There are 40 members that are on this council, and would it be useful to have a seminar to to give them a clearer picture of what happens within their wards, within the parks, and to give those people a clearer picture
If I can just,
on actions.
yeah, if I can just obviously arranging a members' seminar wouldn't come down as a recommendation as such. That'd be something that could liaise with Democratic Services. Yeah, if you want to raise that as a potential, or maybe contact Dan and speak to him about it, then yeah.
You can't action.
I can put it in as a comment.
A comment, yeah,
Sorry. Have you picked up any others that we clearly identified as recommendations within it, Gareth, please?
I've got a few. So if I go through in order of the questions, we have picked things up. So question 2, there was obviously the potential to explore working with Bron Affing. So they said they're renewing their sort of arrangements around green space management. So I didn't know if you wanted to add in the exploring collaboration around parks with Bron Affing on that front.
Yep, I think that's good. Good one. That may again come into community groups, other organisations.
I can merge that into one recommendation, perhaps. Yeah.
That's okay. We're doing the ones that Geraint's picked up so that you can join in with us.
Right. Okay. There was the one about utilising more school pitches where possible. So I didn't know if you wanted them to explore.
To explore the possibility, you know, we've got the issues of antisocial behaviour and wear and tear on pitches. So the exploration of those possibilities. Two-way, because if St Albans are on the waiting list, as Councillor Slade said, there could be a need two ways for that. Okay, next one, Geraint, please.
Sorry, when you talk about school pitches, could you see if there are any good practice examples in other counties around and about in Wales? It would have...
How exactly do you want to formulate that as a recommendation?
They examine.
Look at best practice around.
Best practice. It's the old chestnut, isn't it? You look at best practice. Because I'm pretty certain there's some counties that do it well. I'm not sure who, but you know, a quick desktop search will bring that one up. Should do.
Right. Next one on the list. Obviously, there was the question from Councillor Slade talking about the pay and play pitches, and they said about the potential to explore or encourage clubs to share their pitches more to alleviate the issue. I don't know if you wanted any recommendation on that front, or whether you're happy that that's something that's probably happening as part of the arrangements going forward.
It sounds as though it's something that's happening if they're going to be reviewing leases. I know this is going to be a controversial one because wear and tear on pitches is a big issue, and it's again if clubs are investing heavily into their facilities and other people come in and then they get damaged during that process. So I think if we're going to put that forward in any form, it would be that it's explored with the leaseholders as a priority before officers put forward any sort of type of policy. Or
the next one then was more around the sort of the vandalism and antisocial behaviour sort of side of things. I know that they said it needs a multi sort of approach, and they were pushing more down rather than the sort of CCTV and locking of parks. They were saying more work needs to be done on the educating of children and parents, etc. I didn't know if you wanted to formulate a recommendation.
Yeah, definitely, because they're not aware of the legislation around CCTV, and it can be used as long as it's advertised as being used. But there are issues that Welsh Government have clearly outlined regarding the use of CCTV. All of our parks have got some form of lighting in, so it wouldn't be a problem for electricity supply that I would see. Councillor Hora, did you want to add anything
just
to that?
to kind of go on to that, if it was feasible to put CCTV into all the parks, that would be a massive expense. However, if it was possible to put it in, surely after the question I asked about the hotspots and the collation of that, then that would put the funds or the allocation of CCTV cameras into the right locations.
Well, maybe like it is with fly tipping with the roving cameras, so that you can. They're not static.
They're not static, but they don't last that long, do they?
But it's cost balance, and monitoring, because with CCTVs there's got to be some sort of monitoring. It does cut out all of that sort of side of it if we're only using them in hot spots.
Okay. So can I just come back on that?
It's something that needs to be looked at, I feel, rather than that we can say one way or the other.
So we've got a new tennis courts up in Blaenavon currently. We've had a range of antisocial behaviour on it. We've asked for cameras up there, and we can only get temporary cameras up there when they're needed, which is limiting the amount of execution of how much can we caught on camera. So the idea of getting more cameras, yeah,
it needs to be looked at in more detail.
It has to have more
but it
detail.
does fit into something that the council's already doing with fly tipping and the use of these sort of temporary cameras. So they should have.
Talking about this issue, I did bring in that issue about use of community park groups, community groups, and ownership, because it ties in with that. Because if you've got a good use of the park, they did agree with it, but said it needed to do a lot more work on it. So recommendation.
I think
good community groups.
I think that comes into funding as well.
Both.
Maintenance of park and green spaces because of
locking gates if necessary. There's all that stuff.
Yeah.
See, I haven't mentioned the park there. I know we do it already, but it's also about relationships, because at the end of the day, that's essential. If you've got a good park group, you've got all this going on, your CCTV cameras, you're locking and
okay,
from that point of view, then the Friends of groups could potentially get external funding for that.
This is what I'm
saying.
So
which potentially was going to go.
Strong recommendation. They need to get experts.
And it's the same with Rotary groups, that sort of thing. They, if we involve them more, they may be able to help.
What I hadn't mentioned is what I hadn't mentioned is a lot of the Cwmbran and Pontypool ones are on the canal. We've actually noted that there's about 4 parks all down the canal, so they're actually part of that strategy as well. I hadn't noticed that, but that's incidental, by the way.
Yeah, that's incidental.
No, but it's a good one.
Yeah, right, so if you can give us the next two.
Yeah, there was 2 more possibilities.
Yeah.
So under question 24, there was obviously the issue around engaging with TVA, because they need to engage with TVA before signposting any organisations towards them. They need to have a conversation around their ability and capacity.
Can I say that Dave Williams brought that one up as chair of TVA? Do they have the capacity? Question mark. That's your question. Yeah. I think she should go and talk to them.
And the next one, please, Geraint.
Yeah, I'll just jot this down.
No problem. We're doing well for time now. I thought we were going to overrun this morning.
But can I also, we're talking about capacity to get funding group, they also need to go and talk to community councils, because an awful lot of them get funding.
I think the chair's covered that while you're
good, thank you. Yeah. No, good, but the capacity is now in the community councils.
Yeah, I'll try and, if I can.
They all have development officers now who can do the same.
They've all got development officers.
Well, you haven't got one in Pontypool.
We've all got independent community councils, yeah, but they all need to be approached and spoken to.
Yeah, they've got the capacity to help develop, that's the point. Along with TVA, I would say.
I'll try and wrap around the funding and approach to vandalism under a few different...
The only thing I would say with TVA is that we involve our capacity builders as well.
Good.
And whether or not they can have input in liaising with our teams that they've already got links with.
Noel's doing a lot of work on that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, the other one... The other one I picked up on, I think, is question 26. Right, yeah. I've got then need to explore equity regarding advertising / support of newly available sports facilities. Yeah, so the question, just remind myself. Yeah, it was the question you asked, Chair, around... obviously, down the Expressions of Interests road, you said that different organisations would be more equipped to deal with the spotting that keeping an eye on and finding the newly available.
I think that fits in with the TVA and capacity builders question.
So if I link that to.
We've got some questions to answer that we haven't.
Also, if you're going to go down that line, the new Maindy school builders have actually built a toilet for Pontypool Park.
Okay, that's again, if that's not a recommendation, is it?
So that's everything I've
can
got.
we recommend that they go to discuss the situation at the Ruffits with Pontypool Park Estates, as they've mentioned? And can we also, they've asked whether or not we agree with the split of the sports and community halls policy into two separate policies.
What was that one? Sorry, Chair. Can you repeat that?
Separating out the sports leasing from the community halls policy. Yes, we agree to that being done. Well, they won at the moment. No, they won at the moment.
That's what we're looking at here.
Sorry, Niall, I haven't had my mic on.
Yeah,
We're recommending that the sports facilities leases and the community halls leases are separated into two different policies now, as they both come under different
Totally agree with you.
directorates.
Yes.
Apologies, I didn't have my mic on there.
Yeah, but I think that's...
That was one of the questions that they asked. The other one was about going back to the Ruffits, Pontypool Park Estates, to discuss what to do with the Ruffits.
Yeah.
Okay, what was the other question they asked? I'll just have to quickly go back to the end of the... Bear with us a second. Recommendations. Review the information presented. Should the procedure, right, just make sure that we've done all of this with leasing. Review the does the review of existing leasing arrangements reflect the current position and support equitable and consistent practices? I think the recommendations is made to suggest that.
Just a reminder for everybody, obviously you don't have to make a recommendation on everything.
No.
That's just to sort of get you thinking about possibilities, but you know, as you can see, Chair, you've got a lot of recommendations. Yeah.
So,
Nick,
could there be a recommendation that all play areas are neurodivergent and disabled friendly, because they're not?
Now we've got an issue because there's a law now from Welsh Government that is where practicable and possible, which the officers have already taken into account with the place sufficiency assessment that they did in 2025. Yeah, at this point in time there are only a few parks.
They've got a new play park up at Forsyth that's now neurodivergent, which has just happened recently.
And that's everyone that they look at now. That is being built into it, and that Julian is on the case, making sure that that is relevant, because it now is a requirement. But that's why we asked the question about what barriers were there, practical and reasonable. Okay, has anyone else up there got any more recommendations they'd like to bring forward? I'd like to ask them to explore, because they've asked us the question, how do we feel like we can reduce vandalism and antisocial behaviour? But I think we ought to put it back to them that they as officers explore this, and that the CCTV, the lock in the parks, all that may come into that. Because it is becoming a major problem. It is a financial drain on the council and on our police.
But I still think it's got to come back to community ownership. If you haven't got parties...
We're doing recommendations. We've done that recommendation.
No, I know we have.
Now we're just
but CCTV cameras are only as good as you monitor them.
Yep, totally agree.
And that's the problem with you. You can put all the cameras you like up, but there's nobody
but
looking.
We're just asking the officers to look at this.
No, I get that.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt right now. So if there is an issue about vandalism and there's issues about what's going on, Blenavon's just had a brand new investment of a tennis court and some of it's been vandalised really badly. Is it that the officers need to engage with the communities to really enhance on what they're doing and why they're doing it, so they can actually get that question out? So they can engagement with the locals to find out.
Yeah, I think we covered that as part of some of the recommendations that I'm not going to merge together, and they did say that obviously going down the education route to that would form part of that.
I think they did propose some question to us that we still need to cover, and that was that they we agreed that they need to separate out the sports facilities from the community halls, but that we go forward and look at this expression of interest rather than a waiting list. and I personally, it seems in this day and age that the waiting list is, that someone's been on there for 10 years, and it doesn't fit in with place or need, and the schools, as Alan sort of brought up as well. So an expression of interest, as long as it was advertised to all people who were on the waiting list, it would seem that it was a more fair and everyone had the opportunity to have some support in putting that expression of interest forward. So could we, as a comment, agree to that happening? Does everyone agree with that?
Yes.
Because it was one of the direct questions that they asked.
Okay. Everyone happy? No?
Anything else? It's quite a morning. I'm surprised we got through it in time. And thanks everyone for keeping these questions sort of succinct. Please excuse me, I've not been well myself this morning, so we're all struggling to get through the meeting.
Yes, we're still on camera.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do now, if we've finished making recommendations, is let you know the date of the next meeting. The next meeting will be held on the 12th of March at 2026, and is that the blueprint, Gareth?
It is, yeah.
Hopefully that will be the final document for the blueprint. So without any further ado, I'd like to thank you all for attending this morning and for your input. And the officers, I think they really answered our questions quite well this morning. So I've now closed the meeting, but can I ask everyone to stay just